Girl pays subway fare for a stranger, not knowing he's rich. What he does will impress. The last subway of the night was about to depart from Franklin Station when Marina Matthews rushed through the entrance, her waitress uniform partially hidden under her worn wool coat. The January wind had turned vicious, and her fingers were numb despite the thin gloves she wore. 22 years old, with determination etched in every line of her face, she'd just finished a grueling 10-hour shift at Luigi's Italian restaurant. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and fatigue shadowed her warm brown eyes. Marina counted the coins in her palm carefully. Between rent, utilities, and her university textbooks, every penny mattered. She had exactly enough for the subway fare, plus $3.25 to last until her next paycheck in 4 days. It was going to be another week of ramen, noodles, and peanut butter sandwiches. As she approached the turnstiles, a commotion caught her attention. A tall man in an expensive-looking overcoat was frantically checking his pockets, his face growing increasingly distressed. "I know it's here somewhere," he muttered, emptying the contents of his pockets onto a nearby bench. Keys, phone, business cards, but no wallet. The station attendant looked unimpressed. "No ticket, no entry, sir. That's the rule." "I understand, but my wallet was—" The man stopped mid-sentence, genuine alarm crossing his features. "I think I've been pickpocketed." Marina hesitated, glancing at the digital clock above the platform. The last train would leave in exactly 2 minutes. If she missed it, it would mean a 3-mile walk home in the freezing cold. She had an early class tomorrow, followed by another double shift. She needed that sleep. Yet something in the stranger's expression, not entitlement but genuine distress, made her pause. He wasn't much older than she was, maybe 30 at most, with kind eyes that seemed oddly out of place with his polished appearance. "Wait," Marina called out, moving toward them. She extended her transit card toward the attendant. "Please let him use my fare." The man turned, surprise evident on his face. "Oh no, I couldn't possibly." "It's okay," Marina said with a small smile. "I know what it's like to miss the last train. It's not fun." "But how will you get home?" the man asked, clearly concerned. Marina shrugged, already backing away. "I'll walk. It's not that far." It was a lie, but what did it matter? The attendant swiped her card and gestured impatiently for the man to go through. "Train's leaving in 1 minute, folks." "Please, at least tell me your name," the man called out as the turnstile clicked open for him. "Marina," she replied, already turning toward the exit. "Good night." "I'm Lucas Bennett," he called after her. "Thank you, Marina." The final boarding announcement echoed through the station. Lucas hesitated for a moment, looking between the train and the young woman, walking away. Then, making a split-second decision, he rushed toward the subway car just as the doors began to close. As the train pulled away, Lucas found himself thinking about the waitress uniform he'd glimpsed beneath her coat, the worn edges of her gloves, and the weary determination in her eyes. In his world of corporate acquisitions and tech startups, such spontaneous kindness was rare. He couldn't remember the last time someone had helped him without expecting something in return. Meanwhile, Marina pulled her coat tighter around herself and began the long walk home, her breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. She'd have to wake up even earlier tomorrow to finish her engineering assignment, but she didn't regret her decision. Sometimes, small acts of kindness were all that separated humans from the harshness of the world around them. What Marina couldn't have known was that her simple gesture had stirred something long dormant in Lucas Bennett, the young CEO of Horizon Technologies, a rising star in sustainable tech solutions. That night, as he stepped off the subway and into his luxury apartment building, he couldn't shake the image of Marina disappearing into the cold night. For the first time in years, Lucas felt something he couldn't quite name. Perhaps it was guilt, or perhaps it was the uncomfortable recognition of how disconnected he'd become from the real world. Whatever it was enough to make him promise himself that somehow he would find that young woman again and properly thank her. Little did either of them know that this chance encounter at a subway station would set in motion events that would transform both their lives in ways neither could have imagined. The next morning, Lucas sat in his corner office overlooking the Boston skyline, the meeting around him fading into white noise as his mind kept returning to the previous night. His executive team was discussing quarterly projections, but all Lucas could think about was the young woman who had given her last subway fare to a complete stranger. "Lucas, your thoughts on the Davis acquisition?" His CFO's voice snapped him back to reality. "I think—" Lucas paused, suddenly seeing the number on the proposal document. $20 million for a company that essentially duplicated technology they already had, just to eliminate competition. $20 million. That could be used for what? He wasn't sure, but something felt wrong. "I think we need to reevaluate. Let's table this until next week." His team exchanged confused glances. Lucas Bennett never delayed decisions. It was one of the reasons Horizon Technologies had risen so quickly. His decisive leadership. As the meeting adjourned, Lucas made up his mind. He would find Marina. Not just to thank her, but because for the first time in a long time, he felt like he had encountered something authentic in a world that increasingly felt artificial. What Lucas didn't realize was that while he sat in his plush office contemplating her kindness, Marina was rushing between classes, her stomach empty because she'd given her lunch money to a classmate who'd forgotten their meal card. Despite her own struggles, or perhaps because of them, Marina Matthews lived by a simple philosophy. We rise by lifting others. And by the end of that day, Lucas Bennett would set out on a mission that would begin with finding one kind-hearted waitress and end with discovering a part of himself he didn't know was missing. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Lucas Bennett had never considered himself a detective, but for 2 weeks straight, he found himself at Franklin Station at precisely 11:42 p.m., hoping to catch a glimpse of Marina. He'd abandoned his usual designer suits for more casual attire, jeans and a simple jacket, partly to blend in and partly because something about his encounter with Marina had made him uncomfortable with his usual trappings of wealth. "Back again?" asked Sam, the night station attendant who had witnessed their first encounter. "She hasn't been through here, man. Not since that night." Lucas nodded, trying not to show his disappointment. "Has she ever mentioned where she works? A restaurant, maybe?" Sam hesitated. "Look, I'm not supposed to talk about regular commuters, privacy and all that." Lucas reached into his pocket, then stopped himself. Offering money felt wrong somehow. Instead, he said, "I just want to thank her properly. She helped a stranger and walked home in freezing temperatures. I'd like to return the kindness, that's all." Something in his sincerity must have resonated with Sam. "She wears a Luigi's uniform. It's an Italian place about 6 blocks east of here. That's all I know." That was enough. The next evening, Lucas found himself sitting at a small table in Luigi's, a modest, family-owned restaurant with checkered tablecloths and the rich aroma of garlic and tomato sauce. His heart raced. Inexplicably, when he saw her emerge from the kitchen, balancing 3 plates along her arm with practiced ease. Marina looked different here, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, a warm smile for the customers that didn't quite reach her tired eyes. She hadn't noticed him yet, and Lucas took the moment to observe her interactions. She knelt down to be eye level with a child who wanted more Parmesan cheese. She helped an elderly woman read the small print on the menu. Small kindnesses, offered freely. When she finally approached his table, recognition flickered in her eyes, quickly followed by surprise. "You're the Subway guy," she said, her professional waitress smile softening into something more genuine. "Guilty as charged," Lucas replied, feeling strangely nervous. "I wanted to thank you properly. You really saved me that night." Marina tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "It was nothing, really." "It wasn't nothing to me," Lucas said earnestly. "Can I ask what you're studying? I noticed your textbooks that night." "Environmental engineering," she replied, a flash of passion lighting up her face. "I want to develop sustainable water purification systems for..." underserved communities. Then, as if remembering her job, she quickly added, "But I should take your order. We're kind of slammed tonight." "Of course, I'll have whatever pasta special you recommend." As Marina walked away, Lucas made a decision. He wouldn't tell her he was CEO of Horizon Technologies, a company that ironically had a division dedicated to water purification technology. Something told him that revealing his position would create an immediate barrier between them. Instead, he decided to present himself as Lucas Bennett, software developer, true enough, as he had started his company by coding the initial programs himself. When Marina returned with his fettuccine alfredo, Lucas gathered his courage. "I was wondering if I could buy you a coffee sometime." "As a thank you," he quickly added. Marina studied him, wariness and curiosity battling in her expression. Why? The directness of her question caught him off guard. "Because kindness is rare," he answered honestly, "and I'd like to know the person behind it." After a long moment, Marina nodded. "I finish here at 10 on Thursday. There's a 24-hour diner across the street." "Thursday at 10, Lucas confirmed, trying to conceal the strange elation he felt. As he paid his bill, leaving a tip that was generous but not suspiciously large, Lucas realized he was embarking on something based on a partial truth. The deception made him uncomfortable, but he convinced himself it was temporary. He just wanted to get to know Marina as a person, without the distorting lens of his wealth and status. What harm could come from that? Meanwhile, Marina watched the mysterious subway stranger leave, wondering why someone who clearly had money, despite his casual clothes she'd noticed his expensive watch, would go to such lengths to thank her for a simple subway fare. In her experience, people with means rarely noticed the small sacrifices made by those without. But there had been something in Lucas Bennett's eyes, an earnestness, a curiosity, perhaps even a touch of loneliness, that had made her agree. To coffee. As she cleared his table, Marina told herself it was just coffee, just a thank you, nothing more. Neither of them could have predicted how that simple coffee would set in motion a chain of events that would challenge everything they thought they knew about themselves and each other. Thursday came, and as the clock struck 10 p.m., Marina hung up her apron in Luigi's back room. Her co-worker, Jade, gave her a knowing look. "Is that guy waiting for you again? The good tipper with the nice eyes?" Marina rolled her eyes, but couldn't suppress a small smile. "It's just coffee, Jade." "Honey, men like that don't track down waitresses for just coffee," Jade said, applying a fresh coat of lipstick. "But be careful, guys with money always want something." "It's not like that," Marina insisted, though a flutter of uncertainty passed through her. "He just wants to thank me for helping him out once." As she crossed the street to the fluorescent-lit diner, Marina reminded herself that she had no room in her life for complications. Between her full course load, 2 jobs, and volunteer work, she barely had time to sleep, let alone date. Whatever this Lucas person wanted, she would thank him for the coffee and move on with her life. But when she saw him waiting in a booth, nervously adjusting the sugar packets into a neat row, something unexpected stirred within her. There was a vulnerability to him that seemed at odds with his obvious privilege, and despite her best intentions, Marina found herself curious about the contradiction. Little did she know that this simple coffee would be the beginning of a journey that would test her beliefs, challenge her perceptions, and ultimately transform her life in ways she never could have imagined. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Over the next few weeks, Luigi's Italian restaurant gained a regular customer. Lucas would arrive around 8 p.m., request Marina's section, and order whatever she recommended. Their post-shift coffee meetings at the diner across the street gradually extended longer into the night, their conversations flowing more easily with each encounter. "So you're telling me you've never had a proper New York-style pizza?" Marina asked incredulously one night, sliding into the booth across from Lucas. He shrugged, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I traveled a lot growing up, but mostly to places with Michelin-starred restaurants. My parents weren't exactly the street food type." Marina shook her head in mock disappointment. "That explains so much about you." "What's that supposed to mean?" Lucas laughed. You have this, I don't know, sheltered quality, she explained, stirring her coffee. Like someone who's read about the world in books, but hasn't gotten their hands dirty experiencing it. There was truth in her observation that made Lucas uncomfortable. He quickly redirected. Tell me more about your water purification project, the one you mentioned for your thesis. Marina's eyes lit up, the way they always did when discussing her passion. It's a low-cost filtration system that uses locally sourced materials. The idea is that communities without infrastructure can build and maintain it themselves. She sketched the design on a napkin, her hands animated. The current solutions are either too expensive, require too much technical knowledge, or depend on replacement parts that aren't accessible in remote areas. Lucas studied the design with genuine interest. It was innovative in its simplicity, addressing problems his company's engineers often overlooked in favor of more sophisticated and profitable solutions. This is brilliant, he said sincerely. Marina blushed slightly. It's still theoretical. My professor says I need to consider scalability and implementation, logistics, but I'm stuck on the funding aspect. Even a prototype would cost more than I can afford. Lucas bit his tongue to keep from offering to fund her project on the spot. That would raise too many questions about his resources. What about your work? Marina asked. You mentioned you're a programmer? Software developer, Lucas corrected, sticking to his cover story. Mostly freelance work for tech companies. The half-truth made him wince internally. Is that what you always wanted to do? The question caught him off guard. Few people in his life asked about his desires beyond business success. Actually, I wanted to build things that helped people, he admitted. When I started coding, I dreamed of creating software that would solve real-world problems. Clean water, renewable energy, that sort of thing. What happened to that dream? Marina asked softly. Lucas stared into his coffee. Life, I guess. Opportunities came up that took me in a different direction. It wasn't entirely untrue. Horizon Technologies had started with idealistic goals, but investor demands and market pressures had gradually shifted their focus toward more profitable ventures. It's not too late, you know, Marina said, touching his hand briefly. To build things that matter. Her touch lingered on his skin long after she'd withdrawn her hand. Something about Marina's unwavering belief in making a difference resonated with a part of Lucas he'd nearly forgotten existed. Saturday morning found Marina leading Lucas through the community garden project she helped run in one of Boston's underserved neighborhoods. Children raced between raised beds of vegetables, while volunteers taught them about nutrition and sustainability. I started coming here to fulfill community service hours for a scholarship, Marina explained, handing Lucas a trowel. But now it's my favorite place in the city. Lucas, dressed in clothes far too nice for gardening, looked around uncertainly. What exactly am I supposed to do with this? Marina laughed. You're going to dig in the dirt, Mr. Software Developer. Come on, I'll show you. For the next 3 hours, Lucas worked alongside Marina, planting seedlings and building a new raised bed. His hands became calloused, his jeans stained with soil, but he couldn't remember the last time he'd felt so present, so connected to something real. When a young girl named Zoe presented him with a misshapen carrot she'd just harvested, declaring it the best one ever. Lucas felt a swell of emotion he couldn't quite name. You're a natural with kids, Marina observed as they washed up afterward. Lucas shook his head. I've never really been around them much. My world is mostly boardrooms and computer screens. He caught himself too late, realizing the slip. Boardrooms? Marina questioned. I thought you were a freelancer. Client meetings. Lucas recovered quickly. They like to call them boardrooms to sound important. Marina seemed to accept this, but Lucas could feel the foundation of lies beneath him growing increasingly unstable. Each genuine connection he formed with Marina was built atop a deception that would eventually have to be addressed. That evening, they sat on a bench overlooking the harbor, sharing a container of Luigi's tiramisu that Marina had brought from work. "Can I ask you something personal?" Lucas ventured. Marina nodded, licking a bit of mascarpone from her fork. "With your intelligence and drive, you could probably work anywhere, make a lot more money. Why stay at Luigi's? Why live with 3 roommates and walk home in the cold to save a subway fare?" Marina was quiet for a long moment. "My mom raised me alone in a small town in western Massachusetts. She cleaned houses for wealthy families to put food on our table. One of those families had a daughter my age who went to MIT. I used to help my mom clean their house, and I'd sneak peeks at this girl's engineering books." A soft smile played on her lips at the memory. "When the daughter found out I was interested, she started leaving books for me, explaining concepts when I had questions. My mom worked extra shifts to get me a used computer. I taught myself coding, applied for every scholarship I could find." She looked out at the water, her profile outlined against the setting sun. "My mom died during my sophomore year. Cancer. She never got to see me graduate, but she made me promise 2 things: that I'd finish what I started and that I'd use what I learned to help people like us, people society tends to forget." Lucas felt his throat tighten with emotion. "So that's why," Marina concluded simply. "I work at Luigi's, live with roommates, and walk in the cold sometimes, because every step is keeping a promise." In that moment, Lucas Bennett, who had built a $200 million company from scratch, who had been featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30, who could buy practically anything he wanted, felt utterly humbled. Marina's integrity and purpose made his own life choices seem shallow by comparison. As they walked back to her apartment, their conversation lighter now, Lucas made a silent vow. He would tell Marina the truth about himself soon. But first, he wanted to find a way to support her water purification project without making her feel like a charity case. Perhaps this was the opportunity to realign Horizon Technologies with its original mission, the mission he'd lost sight of somewhere along the way. What Lucas didn't realize was that fate had a different timeline in mind for his revelation, one that would test the fragile connection he and Marina had built in ways he couldn't possibly anticipate. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. March brought the first hints of spring to Boston, and with it, a deepening of the connection between Marina and Lucas. They had fallen into a comfortable routine. Dinners after her shifts, weekend explorations of the city, and long conversations that seemed to effortlessly bridge their different worlds, or at least the different worlds Marina believed they inhabited. In Lucas's sleek downtown office, his assistant Jennifer raised an eyebrow as he rescheduled yet another evening meeting. "That's the 3rd time this month, Lucas. The board is starting to notice." Lucas continued typing on his laptop, not meeting her eyes. "Tell them I'm researching a new market segment. It's not exactly a lie." In fact, his evenings with Marina had sparked a genuine interest in refocusing Horizon Technologies on sustainable solutions for underserved communities, the very purpose with which he had founded the company 6 years ago. "And what should I tell Richard Maxwell? He's been trying to schedule drinks to discuss the SolarTech acquisition for weeks." Jennifer's tone conveyed her growing concern about his unusual behavior. "Tell him," Lucas paused, finally looking up. "Tell him I'll meet him for breakfast tomorrow instead." Jennifer nodded, though her expression remained skeptical. As she left his office, Lucas caught his reflection in the window. Designer suit, custom Italian shoes, the trappings, of success that he now methodically removed each evening before meeting Marina. The double life was becoming increasingly difficult to maintain, but the thought of losing Marina's authentic companionship kept him committed to the charade. Across town, Marina sat in her advanced environmental engineering class, her professor's words suddenly catching her full attention. "Which is why I've invited representatives from several leading firms to review your final projects. This is a tremendous opportunity to showcase your innovations to potential employers or investors." Marina's heart raced. Her water purification system, still mostly theoretical due to funding constraints, could finally get the attention it deserved. She quickly scanned the list of companies projected on the screen. Sunstream Energy, Global Water Initiative, Horizon Technologies. Her breath caught. Horizon Technologies was one of the most innovative firms in sustainable tech. Getting their attention could change everything for her project, and for the communities she hoped to serve. As class dismissed, Marina pulled out her phone to text Lucas the exciting news, then hesitated. While they had grown remarkably close, they rarely discussed career specifics. Lucas knew about her passion for the water project, but she realized she knew surprisingly little about his actual work beyond vague mentions of coding projects and client deadlines. That evening at Luigi's, Marina was unusually quiet as she served Lucas his usual table. Something about him seemed different tonight, a certain tension in his shoulders perhaps, or a guarded look in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. "Is everything okay?" she asked, sliding into the seat across from him after her shift ended. Lucas offered a tired smile. "Just work stress, a big project deadline coming up." He quickly changed the subject. "How was your day? Any breakthroughs on the water filter design?" Marina brightened, her earlier reservations temporarily forgotten. "Actually, yes. My professor announced that our final presentations will be reviewed by industry professionals, including someone from Horizon Technologies. Can you believe it?" The color drained from Lucas's face so suddenly that Marina thought he might be ill. "Lucas, what's wrong?" "Nothing," he said quickly, regaining his composure. "That's fantastic news. When is the presentation?" "April 15th, Marina replied, studying his strange reaction. "Do you know something about Horizon that I should be worried about?" Lucas took a long drink of water before answering. "No, not at all. They're a solid company. I've just heard they can be tough critics." Marina frowned slightly. "Have you worked with them before?" The question hung between them, charged with an unexpected tension. Lucas seemed to be weighing his response carefully. "I've done some consulting for similar companies," he finally said, the evasion leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. "Look, I have an idea. Why don't I help you prepare for your presentation? I have experience with these corporate types." The change of subject was obvious, but Marina let it slide, excited by the offer of help. "That would be amazing. I have all the technical aspects covered, but I'm terrified of the business questions, market viability, scalability, that sort of thing." Lucas relaxed visibly. "That's exactly what I can help with." It wasn't a lie. Who better to prepare her for questions from Horizon Technologies than its CEO? The following Saturday, Marina invited Lucas to her apartment for the first time. She had been hesitant previously, conscious of the contrast between his implied comfortable lifestyle and her humble living situation. "It's not much," she warned as she unlocked the door to the fourth-floor walk-up she shared with 3 other students. "And my roommates might be around." Lucas stepped into the small but tidy apartment, immediately struck by how much personality was packed into the limited space. Handmade bookshelves overflowed with engineering texts and well-worn novels. A small table by the window was covered in Marina's sketches and calculations for her water project. The furniture was obviously second-hand but arranged with care. It felt more like a home than his own sterile luxury condo ever had. "I like it," he said sincerely. "It feels like you." Marina blushed slightly at the compliment as she cleared space on the table. "My roommates are out, so we have the place to ourselves for a few hours. I've prepared all my materials for you to look at." As they worked through her presentation, Lucas was genuinely impressed by the elegance of Marina's design. Using locally available materials and simple construction techniques, she had created a filtration system that could potentially serve communities around the world. What she lacked was the business framework to make it viable at scale. "You need to emphasize the maintenance aspect," Lucas suggested, careful to frame his advice as general business knowledge rather than specific insights. From Horizon's evaluation criteria, companies like Horizon are interested in sustainable revenue streams, not just one-time installations. Marina frowned. "But that's exactly what I'm trying to avoid." I don't want communities to be dependent on outside corporations for clean water. I understand, Lucas said gently. But you need to speak their language to get your foot in the door. Once you have their attention, you can promote the self-sufficiency aspects. Marina considered this, then nodded reluctantly. I hate the game, but I suppose I need to play it if I want to make a real difference. Lucas felt a pang of guilt. He was, after all, one of the corporate gatekeepers she so distrusted, yet here he was, coaching her on how to impress himself. The irony wasn't lost on him. As they took a break for lunch, simple sandwiches Marina had prepared, Lucas noticed a framed photograph on a small side table. A younger Marina stood beside a petite woman with the same warm eyes and determined expression, both wearing graduation caps. "Is that your mother?" he asked softly. Marina nodded, a shadow of sadness crossing her face. That was her GED graduation. She dropped out of high school when she got pregnant with me, but went back for her diploma when I was in high school. She picked up the frame, tracing her mother's face with her finger. She always said education was our ticket to changing our stars. The raw emotion in Marina's voice made Lucas's elaborate deception feel suddenly unforgivable. Here was a woman who valued truth and authenticity above all else, who had shared her deepest dreams and memories with him, while he continued to hide behind a carefully constructed facade. "Marina," he began, his voice thick with resolve, "there's something I need to tell you about." The door burst open, and Marina's roommates tumbled in, laughing about something that had happened at the grocery store. The moment was lost as introductions were made, and the apartment filled with the energy of multiple conversations. Elizabeth, a vivacious psychology major, pulled Marina aside while Lucas helped the other roommates with the groceries. "You didn't mention he was so good-looking," she whispered teasingly. "It's not like that," Marina protested, though her cheeks colored slightly. "We're just friends. The way he looks at you says otherwise," Elizabeth observed. "Just be careful, okay? He seems nice, but guys like that, with the expensive watch he keeps trying to hide under his sleeve and those shoes that definitely cost more than our rent, they live in a different world." Marina glanced over at Lucas, who was laughing at something her roommate Tanya had said. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to acknowledge what she had been feeling over the past weeks, a growing attraction that went beyond friendship. But Elizabeth was right. Something about Lucas remained guarded, hidden away behind casual deflections whenever conversations turned too personal about his life. Later, as Lucas prepared to leave, a moment of awkwardness fell between them at the door. "Thanks for your help today," Marina said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I feel much more prepared now." "Your project is amazing, Marina," Lucas replied with absolute sincerity. "Horizon would be lucky to work with someone like you." Marina studied his face, feeling that strange disconnect again, like he knew more than he was saying. "You never finished telling me what you wanted to say earlier, before everyone came home." Lucas hesitated, his hand on the doorknob. This was his opportunity to come clean, to tell her who he really was before the lie grew any larger. But looking into her trusting eyes, he feared the revelation would destroy everything between them. "It was nothing important," he said finally. "Just, I'm really proud of what you're doing. The world needs more people like you." As he walked down the stairs of her apartment building, Lucas was seized by a sudden, overwhelming clarity. He would use his position to make sure Marina's project received the funding and support it deserved, anonymously through a Horizon Technologies Innovation Grant. And soon, very soon, he would find the courage to tell her the truth. What Lucas couldn't have known was that fate had its own timeline for revelations, and his carefully maintained double life was about to unravel in ways he never anticipated. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. April 15th arrived with unexpected warmth, as if Boston had decided to skip the rest of spring and dive straight into summer. For Marina, the heat only added to her nervousness as she made final adjustments to her presentation in the university's engineering building. Her water purification system prototype, finally assembled thanks to a mysterious department grant that had appeared just when she needed it most, stood ready for demonstration. "You've got this," said Professor Winters, pausing by her station. "Your work is exceptional, Marina. The industry representatives will see that." Marina smiled gratefully, smoothing her only business suit, a Navy second-hand find that Elizabeth had helped tailor to fit her perfectly. "Thank you, Professor. I just hope I can articulate the vision properly." "By the way," Professor Winters added, "I heard Horizon Technologies is sending their CEO to the presentations today, not just a department head. Apparently, Lucas Bennett has taken a personal interest in our sustainable engineering program." The name hit Marina like a physical blow. Lucas Bennett. Lucas. Her Lucas? No, it had to be a coincidence. Lucas was a common name. "Their CEO is coming?" she managed to ask, keeping her voice steady. "Yes, quite the coup for our department. He rarely makes these kinds of appearances anymore. Between us," Professor Winters lowered his voice conspiratorially, "rumor has it Bennett is looking to redirect Horizon's focus toward more humanitarian projects. Your presentation might be particularly interesting to him." As the professor moved on to other students, Marina felt a cold knot form in her stomach. She pulled out her phone and quickly searched Lucas. Bennett Horizon Technologies. Within seconds, she was staring at a professional headshot of the man she'd been having coffee with for months. The man who'd helped plant vegetables in the community garden. The man who'd spent hours helping her prepare for this very presentation. Her phone clattered. To the desk. The room seemed to tilt sideways as the magnitude of his deception crashed over her. All those conversations about her project, all his general advice about impressing Horizon, he had been the CEO all along. Every memory of their time together suddenly took on a new, unsettling dimension. Had it all been some kind of game to him? Was she an amusing diversion from his corporate life? Or worse, was he just mining her ideas for his company's benefit? Marina had no time to process these questions before the doors opened, and the industry representatives began filing in. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw him. Lucas, dressed in an impeccable suit that probably cost more than her semester's tuition, surrounded by deferential department heads and fellow executives. He hadn't noticed her yet, nodding politely as the department chair explained the format of the presentations. Marina ducked behind her display, her mind racing. She could withdraw, claim illness, avoid the confrontation entirely, but her mother's voice seemed to whisper in her ear, "We finish what we start, Marina, no matter what." Straightening her shoulders, Marina made a decision. She would deliver her presentation flawlessly, on her own terms. Whatever game Lucas Bennett was playing, she would not allow it to derail everything she had worked for. The presentations began, with students taking turns explaining their projects to the circulating industry representatives. Marina watched as Lucas moved thoughtfully from station to station, asking perceptive questions and showing genuine interest in each student's work. To anyone else, he appeared to be exactly what he was, a brilliant tech CEO evaluating potential innovations. To Marina, he was a stranger wearing the face of someone she had begun to care deeply about. When it was finally her turn, Marina stood tall beside her prototype, her voice clear and confident as she explained her filtration system. The small crowd gathering around her station indicated strong interest from the industry representatives. And then, moving to the front of that crowd was Lucas. Their eyes met, and recognition flashed across his face, followed immediately by alarm. He clearly hadn't expected to find her here. Perhaps he hadn't made the connection between her Marina and the M. Matthews on the presentation schedule. "Ms. Matthews," he said formally, though she could detect a slight tremor in his voice. "Please tell us about your innovation." Marina held his gaze for a long moment before addressing the entire group. "My system provides sustainable water purification for communities without access to infrastructure or technical expertise. Using locally sourced materials and simple maintenance requirements, it empowers people to manage their own water security rather than depending on outside corporations." She emphasized the last point while looking directly at Lucas, whose face remained professionally composed despite the clear message in her words. "Very impressive," said a representative from Global Water Initiative. "Have you considered implementation logistics, distribution channels?" "Absolutely," Marina replied, launching into the very explanation Lucas had helped her prepare, reciting his advice verbatim while maintaining eye contact with him. With each word, she watched him grow more uncomfortable, more aware of the reckoning that awaited him. The questions continued, and Marina handled each one with poise and precision, her preparation evident to everyone in the room. When asked about funding challenges, she spoke candidly about the obstacles faced by engineers from disadvantaged backgrounds, another pointed message that didn't go unnoticed by Lucas, whose gaze never left her face. As her segment concluded, the representatives from various companies exchanged impressed glances. Marina's project had clearly stood out among the presentations, garnering significant interest from potential investors. "Ms. Matthews," said a silver-haired executive from Sunstream Energy, "we'd be very interested in discussing development opportunities with you. Here's my card." Several other representatives followed suit, including a hesitant member of Lucas's team who glanced at his boss before offering Marina his business card. Lucas himself remained silent, his expression unreadable as he watched this unfold. When the formal presentations concluded, Marina quickly packed up her materials, intent on leaving before having to speak with Lucas alone. She had nearly reached the exit when she heard his voice behind her. "Marina, please. Wait." She turned slowly, her expression carefully controlled, despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. The busy exhibition hall had emptied considerably, leaving them in relative privacy near the doorway. "Mr. Bennett," she said, emphasizing his title with cold formality. "Congratulations on finding such an efficient way to scout for new ideas. Pretending to be a regular person must save you a lot of time in meetings." Lucas winced at her words. "It wasn't like that, please, just let me explain." "Explain what exactly?" Marina's voice remained low but intense. "How you lied to me for months. How you pretended to be someone struggling to make ends meet while you're—" She gestured at his tailored suit, his designer watch, the trappings of wealth he could no longer hide. "This? Was I some kind of social experiment to you? The charity case who paid your subway fare?" "No." Lucas stepped closer, his composure cracking. "I never meant to deceive you. That night at the subway station, I was genuinely touched by your kindness. I just wanted to thank you properly. And the proper way to thank someone is to create an elaborate fiction about who you are." Marina shook her head in disbelief. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? All those times I shared my struggles with money, my concerns about the future, and you just sat there, what? Feeling superior? Amused by the quaint problems of the working class?" Lucas ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. "It was never about feeling superior. If anything, I've felt increasingly inadequate around you. Your integrity, your purpose, they made me question everything about my life. Don't you dare try to make this into some kind of spiritual awakening for you," Marina snapped, tears threatening despite her determination to remain composed. "You had countless opportunities to tell me the truth. Instead, you coached me on how to impress your own company, all while pretending to be just another freelancer." A look of genuine regret passed over Lucas's face. "I was going to tell you, that day at your apartment." "Save it," Marina cut him off. "I trusted you, Lucas. I let you into my life, introduced you to my friends." Her voice caught slightly. "I thought you were different, but you're just like every other privileged person who thinks the rules don't apply to them." "That's not fair," Lucas protested, a flash of anger breaking through his remorse. "You never gave me a chance to explain myself beyond my career. You made assumptions about who I was based on what I did for a living." Marina laughed bitterly. "Oh, so this is my fault now? For judging people based on their jobs? That's rich coming from someone who was literally afraid to tell me what he really did for a living." "I was afraid of exactly this reaction," Lucas countered. "The moment you found out I had money, you put me in a box labeled privileged and out of touch. I wanted you to know me as a person first, not as a CEO. What you wanted doesn't justify lying," Marina said firmly. "Relationships, even friendships, are built on trust. You broke that trust, Lucas." Repeatedly and deliberately. The finality in her tone seemed to hit Lucas like a physical blow. For a moment they stood in tense silence, the gulf between them seemingly unbridgeable. "Marina," Lucas finally said, his voice softer now, "your project is brilliant. Let Horizon fund its development. Whatever you think of me personally, don't let that stop you from making your vision a reality." Marina stared at him, incredulous. "You think I would work with you now, after this? I'd rather start from scratch than build anything on a foundation of lies." She turned away. But Lucas reached for her arm, stopping just short of touching her. "The grant that funded your prototype, that was from Horizon, an anonymous departmental grant that appeared just when you needed it." Marina froze, then slowly turned back to face him. "That was you?" Lucas nodded. "I couldn't stand seeing you struggle to fund something so important. But I swear there were no strings attached. The grant was given with full intellectual property rights remaining with you." For a moment, Marina seemed at a loss for words, conflicting emotions playing across her face. Then her expression hardened again. "Thank you for the grant," she said stiffly. "But it doesn't change anything between us. Please don't contact me again, Mr. Bennett. I think we've said all there is to say." With that, she walked away, her back straight, her pace measured, despite the tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her run. Behind her, Lucas stood motionless, watching her leave, the full weight of his mistakes crushing down on him. For the first time in his charmed life, Lucas Bennett had found something money couldn't fix, and someone money couldn't impress. "Everything all right, sir?" asked Jennifer, his assistant, approaching cautiously. She had witnessed the tense exchange from a distance. "No, Jennifer," Lucas replied quietly, still staring at the doorway where Marina had disappeared. "Nothing is all right at all. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story." May arrived with a cascade of spring blossoms that seemed to mock Lucas's darkening mood. 3 weeks had passed since the disastrous confrontation with Marina, and despite his numerous attempts to contact her, calls, texts, even a handwritten letter delivered to her apartment, she remained resolutely silent. Luigi's Italian restaurant had informed him politely but firmly that Ms. Matthews had requested he not be seated in her section, and eventually, Lucas stopped going altogether. His corner office at Horizon Technologies, once a symbol of his success, now felt like a glass and steel prison. The panoramic views of Boston that had once inspired him now only reminded him of all the places he and Marina had explored together. The harbor where they'd shared tiramisu, the community garden where he'd first felt truly useful, the coffee shop where she'd explained her dreams for a better world. "The board is waiting, sir," Jennifer reminded him gently, breaking into his thoughts. "The quarterly strategy meeting?" Lucas nodded absently, gathering the presentation materials he had barely reviewed. His executive team had noticed the change in him, the lack of focus, the uncharacteristic indecision, the dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. Even now, as he walked into the boardroom where 12 expectant faces turned toward him, Lucas couldn't stop thinking about Marina's final words. "I'd rather start from scratch than build anything on a foundation of lies." "Good morning, everyone," he began mechanically. "Before we dive into the quarterly numbers, I'd like to discuss a potential shift in our company's direction." Richard Maxwell, Horizon's sharp-eyed CFO, exchanged concerned glances with several board members. "A shift, Lucas? This isn't on the agenda." "No, it's not," Lucas acknowledged, suddenly animated by a sense of purpose that had been missing for weeks. "But I believe it's necessary. For too long we've allowed investor pressure and market trends to pull us away from our founding mission, creating sustainable technology solutions for those who need them most. He brought up a series of slides showing Horizon's progression from an idealistic startup to a profit-driven corporation. Our water purification division, once our flagship, now receives less than 12% of our R&D budget because the profit margins are thinner than our consumer electronics. That's just good business, interjected Maxwell. We have a responsibility to our shareholders. Do we have a responsibility to humanity? Lucas countered, surprising everyone with his intensity. What good is a successful company in a world where millions lack access to clean water, where sustainable solutions are only available to those who can afford premium prices? The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This was not the pragmatic, numbers-focused CEO they were accustomed to. Lucas continued, growing more passionate with each word. I'm proposing a strategic restructuring, redirecting 30% of our R&D budget toward developing affordable, sustainable technologies for underserved markets. The room erupted in objections, with Maxwell's voice rising above the others. That's corporate suicide, Lucas. Our shareholders will revolt. Then let them, Lucas replied calmly. I've founded this company to make a difference, not just a profit. And I'm willing to stake my position as CEO on that founding principle. The meeting devolved into heated debates that lasted well into the afternoon. By the time Lucas returned to his office, exhausted but resolute, he knew he had started a corporate civil war he might not win. Yet for the first time since Marina had walked away, he felt aligned with his true self. Across town, Marina sat in her small apartment, surrounded by textbooks and the components of her water purification prototype. Final exams were approaching, and she needed to focus, yet her mind kept returning to Lucas, to his deception, but also to his final words about funding her project. Elizabeth emerged from her bedroom, concern evident on her face. Still at it? You've barely left this apartment in weeks. Marina shrugged, not looking up from her textbook. Finals, graduation, you know how it is. Elizabeth sat on the arm of the couch. This isn't just about school, is it? It's about him. I don't want to talk about Lucas. Marina said firmly, the name still painful to pronounce. You don't have to, Elizabeth replied gently. But you should know that he came by again yesterday while you were in class. He left this. She handed Marina a thick envelope. Inside was not another apology letter as Marina had expected, but a formal letter from Horizon Technologies confirming a no-strings-attached grant for her water purification project, along with legal documents assigning all intellectual property rights exclusively to her. He's persistent, I'll give him that, Marina muttered, trying to ignore the conflicting emotions the gesture stirred in her. Maybe he's genuinely sorry, Elizabeth suggested carefully. People make mistakes, Marina, even big ones. It wasn't just a mistake, Marina insisted, though with less conviction than before. He created an entire fake identity. He let me talk about struggling to pay rent while he probably lives in some luxury penthouse. True, Elizabeth acknowledged. But think about it. If he'd told you he was a rich CEO the night you met, would you have given him a chance to be your friend? The question hit uncomfortably close to home. Marina had always prided herself on judging people by their character, not their bank accounts, but she couldn't deny a certain wariness of the wealthy that stemmed from watching her mother clean their homes for years. That doesn't excuse lying, she said, but her voice lacked its previous anger. No, it doesn't, Elizabeth agreed, but maybe it explains it. She stood, heading toward the kitchen. For what it's worth, that water grant could change everything for the communities you want to help. Maybe his way of making amends isn't so bad after all. After Elizabeth left, Marina unfolded a newspaper clipping that had also been in the envelope, a business section article detailing Horizon Technologies' controversial new direction toward developing affordable, sustainable solutions, spearheaded by CEO Lucas Bennett, despite significant board opposition. For the first time since their confrontation, Marina allowed herself to wonder if perhaps there was more to Lucas's story than she had been willing to hear. Meanwhile, Lucas had made another life-altering decision. The for sale sign outside his luxury downtown penthouse caught Jennifer by surprise when she dropped off some documents that required his signature. "You're selling your place?" she asked, looking around at the sleek, minimalist space that Lucas had always seemed so proud of. "Are you moving to a different neighborhood?" Lucas shook his head, signing the papers without looking up. "I'm downsizing. This place has always been more about status than comfort." Jennifer studied her boss with growing concern. In the 5 years she'd worked for him, Lucas had never shown such disregard for the trappings of success that had once seemed so important to him. "Lucas," she ventured, using his first name in a rare moment of personal concern, "what's really going on with you? First the board meeting bombshell, now selling your home. Is everything okay?" Lucas looked up, a rueful smile touching his lips. "I met someone who made me question everything about my life, Jennifer. And in trying not to lose her, I ended up losing myself." He gestured around at the expensive but soulless apartment. "All of this, it was never who I really was. It was who I thought I needed to be." "And who are you really?" Jennifer asked softly. Lucas considered the question for a long moment. "I'm still figuring that out. But I know it's not this person who surrounded himself with things instead of purpose." The following weekend found Lucas volunteering at the same community garden where Marina had once taken him. Without her there to guide him, he felt awkward and out of place. But the warmth of the community members and the simple satisfaction of working with his hands gradually eased his discomfort. Little Zoe, the girl who had given him the misshapen carrot months earlier, recognized him immediately. "You're Marina's friend, the one who doesn't know how to plant things." Lucas smiled sadly. "I'm trying to learn, though. Will you help me?" For the next few hours, Lucas worked alongside Zoe and other community members, planting seedlings, weeding garden beds, and repairing a broken irrigation system. By the end of the day, his expensive clothes were stained with soil, his hands were blistered, and his back ached, but he felt more at peace than he had in weeks. "You did good work today," said an older woman named Gloria, who seemed to be in charge of the garden. "We could use regular help like yours." "I'd like that," Lucas replied sincerely. "I have a lot to learn about building things that last." As he was preparing to leave, he noticed a familiar figure at the garden entrance, Elizabeth, Marina's roommate, watching him with evident curiosity. "She's not here," Elizabeth said as he approached. "If that's who you're looking for." "I know," Lucas admitted. "I came to help, not to find her, though I won't. I pretend I don't miss her." Elizabeth studied him thoughtfully, taking in his dirt-stained clothes and genuine exhaustion. "You know, for a supposedly heartless corporate CEO, you're doing a pretty good impression of someone who actually cares." "It's not an impression," Lucas said quietly. "I do care. About this place. About the work Marina was trying to do. About her. Enough to give up your comfortable life?" Elizabeth challenged, gesturing at his muddy designer shoes. Lucas met her gaze directly. "Comfort isn't the same as happiness. I've been comfortable for years, but I wasn't happy. Until Marina," Elizabeth finished for him. "Yeah, she has that effect on people. She sees the best in them, sometimes before they see it in themselves." They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Elizabeth sighed. "Look, I'm not going to play matchmaker here. Marina is still hurt, and she has every right to be. But she's also stubborn to a fault. If you're serious about making amends, about being the person she believed you could be, it might be worth sticking around." With that cryptic encouragement, Elizabeth left, leaving Lucas to wonder if there might still be hope for forgiveness, if not reconciliation. What neither Lucas nor Marina knew was that their separate journeys of reflection were about to intersect in an unexpected way, one that would challenge them both to reconsider not just their relationship, but their very definitions of purpose and success. As May turned to June, Marina approached graduation with a mixture of pride and trepidation. The water purification system that had started as a thesis project had gained significant attention following the industry presentations. Several companies had extended development offers, though notably absent was any direct contact from Horizon Technologies beyond the grant Lucas had arranged. Marina had finally decided to accept funding from Global Water Initiative, a respected nonprofit with extensive experience implementing sustainable solutions in developing regions. Their offer was less lucrative than others, but their mission aligned perfectly with her vision. The day before her graduation ceremony, Marina received an unexpected call from Professor Winters. "Marina, I have some rather surprising news," he began. "The commencement speaker who was scheduled for tomorrow has had a family emergency. The university has asked Lucas Bennett from Horizon Technologies to step in." Marina's heart sank. "Lucas Bennett? Tomorrow?" "Yes, apparently he had been our second choice initially. The committee was quite pleased he could accommodate us on such short notice." The professor paused, sensing her discomfort. "Is everything all right? I recall you made quite an impression on him at the presentations." "Everything's fine," Marina assured him, though her mind was racing. It was just unexpected news. After hanging up, Marina paced her small apartment, conflicting emotions battling within her. The thought of seeing Lucas again, of sitting through his speech on what should be one of the proudest days of her life, was unsettling. Yet a small, increasingly insistent part of her wondered what he might say, whether the man who would speak tomorrow would be the corporate CEO she had glimpsed that day at the university, or the thoughtful, passionate person she had come to care for during their time together. What Marina didn't know was that across town, Lucas sat at his desk late into the night, drafting and redrafting his commencement speech, knowing that among the sea of graduates would be the one person whose opinion mattered most to him, the person who had catalyzed his own journey of transformation. As the sun rose on graduation day, two people on separate paths prepared to face each other once more, neither fully prepared for how profoundly that encounter would challenge everything. They thought they knew about forgiveness, purpose, and the courage required to build a life of authentic meaning. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The university auditorium buzzed with excitement as graduates in blue robes and mortarboards found their seats. Marina sat among her fellow engineering graduates, trying to focus on the culmination of years of hard work, rather than the knowledge that Lucas Bennett would soon be standing at the podium just yards away from her. Elizabeth squeezed her hand from the adjacent seat. "You okay? You look like you might bolt any second." "I'm fine," Marina whispered back, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. "It's just surreal, you know? After everything." The university president approached the microphone to welcome the graduates and their families. Marina half listened to the familiar platitudes about bright futures and changing the world, her gaze repeatedly drawn to the row of distinguished guests seated on the stage. Lucas sat at the end, dressed in formal academic regalia, his expression uncharacteristically solemn as he surveyed the sea of graduates before him. "And now," the president announced, "it is my privilege to introduce our commencement speaker. Though he joins us on short notice, his reputation as an innovative leader in sustainable technology makes him particularly well-suited to address our graduates today. Please welcome the founder and CEO of Horizon Technologies, Mr. Lucas Bennett." Polite applause filled the auditorium as Lucas approached the podium. For a brief, heart-stopping moment, his eyes seemed to find Marina's in the crowd, though she told herself it was impossible. She was just one face among hundreds. "Thank you for that kind introduction," Lucas began, his voice steady but somehow more humble than the confident corporate persona Marina had glimpsed. At the engineering presentations, traditional commencement speeches talk about success, about climbing ladders and breaking barriers. I had planned to give that kind of speech today. He paused, looking down at what must have been his prepared remarks, then deliberately set them aside. "But I've been reconsidering what success really means, and I'd like to share some thoughts on that instead." A ripple of interest moved through the audience. This wasn't the standard commencement fare. 6 years ago, I founded Horizon Technologies with a clear mission: to develop sustainable solutions that would help those most in need. We created water purification systems, solar-powered infrastructure, and communications technology for remote communities. Lucas's passion was evident in his voice. We were idealistic, driven by purpose rather than profit. He paced slightly, his gaze sweeping across the graduates. Then success happened. Investors came calling. Market opportunities beckoned. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, our focus shifted. Quarterly reports became more important than quarterly impact assessments. Stock prices mattered more than the number of lives improved. Marina sat straighter, her full attention captured by this unexpected candor. By conventional metrics, I became very successful, Lucas continued. Forbes lists, television interviews, a corner office with a view. I had everything our culture tells us defines achievement. His voice took on a more personal tone. And yet something was missing. An emptiness I couldn't identify until a chance encounter showed me what I'd lost along the way. Marina's breath caught. Surely he wasn't going to. A few months ago, a young woman paid my subway fare when I found myself without my wallet. A small kindness, you might think, but in that simple gesture was something profound, authentic generosity with no expectation of return. That moment began a journey that led me to question everything about the life I had built. A murmur ran through the audience. This was decidedly not the inspirational platitudes they had expected. I sought out this person, Lucas continued, carefully avoiding any identifying details, curious about someone who would help a stranger despite limited resources of her own. What I discovered was a life of purposeful meaning that made my so-called success seem hollow by comparison. Marina felt her cheeks burn, gratitude mingling with lingering hurt as she realized he was protecting her privacy, even while sharing their story. This person, this extraordinary individual, showed me what true success looks like. It isn't measured in dollars or accolades, but in alignment between your values and your actions, in the integrity to stand by your principles even when they come at a personal cost, in the courage to pursue meaning rather than mere comfort. Lucas paused, his expression intensely earnest. I'm standing before you today not as someone who has achieved success, but as someone still learning what success really means. And I want to challenge you as you leave this institution to define success on your own terms, to build lives of purpose, not just prosperity. He gripped the sides of the podium, his voice gaining conviction. That's why today I'm announcing a fundamental restructuring of Horizon Technologies. We're returning to our founding mission, redirecting 50% of our resources toward developing sustainable solutions for communities in need, with a commitment that these technologies will be accessible to all, not just those who can afford premium prices. A gasp rippled through the auditorium. This was no longer just a commencement speech, it was a corporate announcement with significant implications. Marina stared in disbelief. 50% was far more than the 30% he had proposed to his board in the article she had read. I recognize that this decision may impact our stock price, Lucas acknowledged. Some shareholders may leave us, but I believe that in the long run, purpose-driven business is sustainable business. And more importantly, it's the right thing to do. He looked out at the graduates, his gaze briefly finding Marina's. The most valuable lesson I've learned recently came not from business school or boardrooms, but from someone who reminded me that we rise by lifting others. That true fulfillment comes not from what we accumulate, but from what we contribute. As Lucas concluded his speech, to thunderous applause, Marina sat motionless, tears streaming down her face. Elizabeth squeezed her hand again, whispering, "Wow, he really did it." "Did what?" Marina managed to ask. "Changed everything. For you." Marina shook her head. "Not for me. Because of me, maybe. But he did it for himself, and for all the people who will benefit from Horizon refocusing on its mission." The rest of the ceremony passed in a blur. When Marina crossed the stage to receive her diploma, she risked a glance at Lucas, who sat watching with unmistakable pride in his eyes. She offered a small, tentative smile, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. After the ceremony, as graduates and families mingled on the university lawn, Marina found herself scanning the crowd for Lucas. She wasn't sure what she would say to him, only that something needed to be said. A tap on her, tap. Shoulder made her turn. It was Professor Winters, beaming. "Marina, remarkable speech from Bennett, wasn't it? And I have more good news. He's requested a meeting with you about your water purification system. Apparently, Horizon is looking to partner with innovative graduates as part of their new direction." Marina's surprise must have shown on her face because the professor quickly added, "Of course, there's no pressure to accept. I know you've been considering Global Water Initiative's offer as well." "Thank you, Professor. I'll think about it," Marina replied, trying to process this new development. As the professor moved on to congratulate other students, Marina felt another presence beside her. This time it was Lucas, who maintained a respectful distance even as he approached her with evident trepidation. "Congratulations, Marina," he said simply. "Thank you," she replied, studying him carefully. In place of his academic regalia, he now wore a simple dark suit that somehow seemed less imposing than his usual corporate attire. That was quite a speech. "I meant every word," Lucas said quietly. "Especially the parts about what I learned from you." Marina glanced around at the crowded lawn. "This isn't really the place for this conversation." "You're right," Lucas acknowledged. "But I wanted to give you something before you left." He handed her a small envelope. "Not a job offer, though the position is yours if you want it. Just something to consider." Marina hesitated before accepting the envelope. You know, most people don't announce major corporate restructuring at a university commencement. A hint of the old Lucas emerged in his smile. "I've been told I have a flair for the dramatic when properly motivated." Despite herself, Marina felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. 50% is a lot more than the 30% you proposed to your board initially. "You read about that? You included the article with the grant paperwork." Lucas nodded. 30% was a compromise. 50% is what's right. Sometimes the hardest choices are the clearest ones. Before Marina could respond, her family approached, eager to take graduation photos. Lucas stepped back gracefully. "I'll let you celebrate with your family. Congratulations again, Marina. You've earned this moment." As he walked away, Marina slipped the envelope into her pocket, determined to focus on celebrating with her loved ones. Whatever Lucas had given her, whatever decision awaited her, it could wait until tomorrow. That night, after her family had departed and her roommates had gone to a graduation party she was too exhausted to attend, Marina finally opened Lucas's envelope. Inside was not a job offer, as she had half expected, but a deed transferring ownership of a small commercial building in one of Boston's underserved neighborhoods to Marina Matthews' Water Innovation Lab. Attached was a simple note in Lucas's handwriting. "The space is yours, whether or not you ever choose to work with Horizon. No strings attached. You once told me your dream was to develop water solutions for communities in need. I believe in that dream. L." Marina sat on her bed for a long time, the deed in her hands, conflicting emotions washing over her. The grant had been generous, but this was something else entirely. A foundation upon which to build her life's work, given freely with no expectation of return. It was, she realized with a start, exactly the kind of gesture she herself might have made had their situations been reversed. A recognition of potential, a belief in purpose, a commitment to something larger than oneself. Across town, in a modest apartment that stood in stark contrast to his former penthouse, Lucas Bennett sat on a half-unpacked moving box, his phone silent beside him. He had done what he could, restructured. His company offered Marina both independence and partnership, given her the space to build her vision on her own terms. The rest was up to her. He had no idea if she would ever forgive his deception, No idea if she would choose to work with Horizon or forge her own path entirely. All he knew was that either way he would continue the transformation she had catalyzed, not for her, but because she had reminded him of who he truly wanted to be. What neither of them realized that night was how their separate decisions, born of newly clarified purpose, were setting the stage for an unexpected collaboration that would challenge them both in ways they couldn't yet imagine. The morning after graduation, Marina woke to a flurry of text notifications and missed calls. Confused and still groggy, she scrolled through message after message from classmates, professors, and even journalists, seeking comment on Bennett's announcement. "What announcement?" she muttered, opening her news app, and then nearly dropped her phone. The headline blazed across her screen. Tech CEO Lucas Bennett steps down as Horizon restructures, sites return to core values. Hands shaking slightly, Marina read the article. Following his commencement speech, Lucas had officially announced his resignation as CEO, though he would remain on the board to oversee Horizon's transition. He had personally donated 40% of his company's shares to establish the Horizon Foundation, dedicated to implementing sustainable technology solutions in underserved communities worldwide. The business world was in shock. Financial analysts were predicting significant stock volatility. Former board members were quoted expressing everything from outrage to reluctant admiration. And there, buried in the third paragraph, was a detail that made Marina's heart skip. Bennett has named water purification technology as the Foundation's first priority, inspired by innovative work from recent engineering graduates. Her phone rang again. Professor Winters, sounding more excited than she'd ever heard him. "Marina, have you seen the news? This is extraordinary. Bennett specifically mentioned your project as a model for their new direction." His voice dropped to a conspiratorial tone. "Between us, this could be the opportunity of a lifetime. His foundation representatives are coming to campus this afternoon to discuss potential collaborations. I've scheduled you for the 2 p.m. slot." "Professor, Marina began, not sure what she wanted to say. I know, he interrupted, misinterpreting her hesitation. "You're considering other offers, but at least hear them out. This kind of backing could take your work global in ways we never imagined." After he hung up, Marina sat motionless on her bed, the deed to her new lab space still clutched in her hand. Lucas had stepped down as CEO. He had fundamentally restructured his life's work, and he had done it without any guarantee that she would ever speak to him again. By the time Marina arrived at the engineering building that afternoon, she had made her decision. She would listen to the Foundation representatives out of courtesy to Professor Winters, but her mind was already set on establishing her independent lab with global water initiative support. Lucas's gift of the building space was generous, but maintaining her autonomy felt essential after everything that had happened. She was surprised, however, to find not Foundation representatives waiting in the conference room, but Jennifer, Lucas's assistant, whom she recognized from glimpses during the confrontation at the engineering presentation. "Ms. Matthews," Jennifer greeted her warmly. "Thank you for coming." "I was expecting Foundation representatives," Marina said, remaining standing even as Jennifer gestured to a chair. "Mr. Bennett thought you might be more comfortable speaking with someone familiar with both sides of the situation," Jennifer explained. "I've worked closely with him for 5 years, and I'm well versed in both the Foundation's mission and your water purification technology." "Both sides?" Marina echoed, finally taking a seat. "What exactly does that mean?" Jennifer's professional demeanor softened slightly. "It means I know about your history with Lucas. Not all the details, of course, but enough to understand why you might be hesitant to work with Horizon in any capacity." Marina was taken aback by this candor. "He told you about us?" "Not initially," Jennifer admitted. "But when the CEO of your company suddenly starts questioning every aspect of your business model, sells his luxury penthouse, and announces a complete corporate restructuring, you start to ask questions." She smiled slightly. "For what it's worth, I've never seen him so certain about anything as he is about this new direction. And from what I understand about your work, The alignment seems serendipitous. Marina studied Jennifer thoughtfully. Did he send you to convince me to join the foundation? No, Jennifer replied firmly. He was explicit that there should be no pressure. He believes your work deserves support whether or not you ever choose to associate with him or Horizon again. She slid a folder across the table. These are the Foundation's initial plans. Your project is featured prominently, but with full acknowledgement that your participation would be entirely your choice. Marina skimmed the documents, impressed despite herself. The Foundation's approach was comprehensive, addressing not just technology development, but implementation, community training, and long-term maintenance, exactly the holistic strategy she had always envisioned. This is more thorough than I expected, she admitted. Lucas spent most of the past month developing it, Jennifer said, often working through the night after board meetings during the day. Marina looked up sharply. The past month? Before the graduation speech? Jennifer nodded. He's been planning this transition since... She hesitated, then continued more carefully. Since certain events caused him to reevaluate his priorities. Marina sat back, processing this information. Lucas hadn't been reacting impulsively to their confrontation or trying to impress her with grand gestures. He had been methodically rebuilding his company's mission from the ground up, regardless of whether she ever forgave him. Where is he now? Marina asked suddenly. Jennifer looked surprised at the question. At the community center in Dorchester. He's been volunteering there regularly, helping set up their first water purification installation as a demonstration project. Marina stood abruptly. Thank you for your time, Jennifer. I need to think about all of this. Of course, Jennifer replied, rising as well. The Foundation isn't expecting an immediate decision. Take all the time you need. As Marina walked out of the engineering building into the bright June sunshine, her mind was racing. The Lucas Bennett who had crafted that foundation plan, who had stepped down from his position of power to better serve his values, who was at this very moment installing water purification systems in one of Boston's most underserved communities. That was the Lucas she had glimpsed beneath the deception, the person she had begun to care for before discovering his lie. Without fully forming a conscious decision, Marina found herself boarding a bus to Dorchester. She wasn't sure what she would say when she saw him, only that something compelled her to witness firsthand this transformation he had undergone. The community center was bustling with activity when she arrived. Children played basketball on an outdoor court while volunteers unloaded supplies from a small truck. Marina scanned the crowd, finally spotting Lucas near the building's entrance, his sleeves rolled up as he helped carry a large filter tank. He was dressed simply in jeans and a t-shirt, his face flushed with exertion, looking more like the freelance programmer she had first befriended than the polished CEO she had confronted. She hung back, observing as he worked alongside the other volunteers with an easy camaraderie that suggested this wasn't his first time here. There was no hint of the entitled executive giving performative charity. He was simply a man doing useful work, laughing at something one of the community members said, stopping to explain the filtration system to curious teenagers who gathered around the equipment. As if sensing her presence, Lucas looked up and froze when he saw her standing at the edge of the basketball court. For a long moment, they simply gazed at each other across the distance, neither making a move to bridge the gap. Then, with a deep breath, Marina walked toward him. "Hi," she said simply when she reached him. "Hi," he replied, clearly surprised by her appearance. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I didn't expect to be here," Marina admitted. "I had a meeting with Jennifer about the foundation." Lucas nodded, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I hope she was clear that there's no pressure or expectation." "She was." Marina glanced at the filtration system they were installing. "This looks familiar." "It should," Lucas said with a small smile. "It's based on your design with a few modifications for this specific location. The community board approved it last week." Marina's eyebrows rose. "My design? But how did you..." Your presentation materials were quite detailed, Lucas explained. And I have a good memory for things that matter. He hesitated, then added more quietly, We've credited you as the designer, of course. All the documentation acknowledges you as the primary engineer. A middle-aged woman approached them, interrupting the moment. Lucas, we're ready. The connection to the main water line when you are. I'll be right there, Gloria, Lucas replied. He turned back to Marina with an apologetic expression. I should go, Marina nodded. Don't let me interrupt. You could join us, Lucas suggested cautiously. We could use another engineer who understands how this system works. Marina hesitated, then found herself nodding. I'd like that, actually. For the next several hours, Marina worked alongside Lucas and the community volunteers, making adjustments to the system, explaining maintenance procedures, and witnessing the moment when clean water first flowed from the new taps. The children's excitement, the grateful tears of elders who had dealt with contaminated water for years, the sense of community ownership over the solution. It was everything Marina had dreamed her work could accomplish. As the sun began to set and the volunteers started packing up, Marina found herself standing beside Lucas once more, both of them watching a group of children filling water bottles at the new filtration station. This is what it was all about for me, Marina said softly. Not the technology itself, but this, actual people having access to something so basic that most of us take for granted. Lucas nodded. I know. It's what Horizon was meant to do from the beginning, before we got distracted by growth and profit margins. He turned to face her directly. Marina, I want you to know that all of this, the foundation, stepping down as CEO, refocusing Horizon, none of it was about trying to win you back. It was about finding my way back to the person I wanted to be. I believe you, Marina said, and realized she truly did. No one restructures their entire life and company just to impress someone, though I won't. Pretend you weren't the catalyst, Lucas admitted with a rueful smile. You showed me the gap between who I was and who I claimed to be. A comfortable silence fell between them, less charged than their previous encounters since the confrontation. I got your gift, Marina said finally. The lab. Space. It's not a gift, Lucas corrected. It's an investment in what I believe will be world-changing work. Marina studied him thoughtfully. You know, when I first found out who you really were, I thought everything between us had been a lie. But standing here now seeing you like this, she gestured to the community center, the filtration system, his rolled-up sleeves and dirt-stained hands. I'm starting to think that maybe this is the real Lucas Bennett, that the corporate CEO was the actual disguise all along. Lucas looked genuinely startled by her insight, then thoughtful. I never considered it that way, but you might be right. The corporate persona was something I constructed to meet expectations. My parents, my investors, societies. This, he mirrored her gesture. This feels more authentic. So where do we go from here? Marina asked, the question encompassing far more than just their immediate plans. Lucas considered his answer carefully. Professionally, that's entirely up to you. The foundation would be honored to support your work in whatever capacity you choose. As an independent researcher, a partner, or even a critic who keeps us honest. He paused, weighing his next words. Personally, I would like the chance to reintroduce myself. The real Lucas Bennett this time. No lies, no omissions. Marina found herself smiling despite the complexity of emotions still swirling within her. I think I'd like to meet him. As they walked toward the community center's exit together, neither making promises nor avoiding possibilities, both recognized that something fundamental had shifted, not just in their individual lives or their relationship to each other, but in their understanding of what it meant to build something meaningful that could truly last. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. August in Boston brought sweltering heat that seemed to simmer the ambition right out of the city. But inside the converted warehouse space that now housed the Marina Matthews Water Innovation Lab, the atmosphere was charged with purpose and possibility. Large industrial fans circulated the humid air as Marina and her small team worked on refining prototypes for their first major deployment. "The membrane's flow rate is still inconsistent at higher sediment concentrations," said Raj, a brilliant environmental engineering graduate Marina had recruited from her university cohort. He adjusted his safety goggles as they examined the test results. "We might need to reconsider the filtration sequence." Marina nodded, studying the data on her tablet. "Let's try reversing the carbon and ceramic stages. That might reduce the clogging without compromising purification." The lab space itself was a testament to new beginnings. What had once been a neglected building in a struggling neighborhood was now a hub of activity. Large windows flooded the open floor plan with natural light, illuminating workstations where engineers and community members collaborated on various aspects of water technology. A classroom area hosted regular workshops for local residents interested in learning about water quality and system maintenance. Marina had been adamant that the lab should benefit its immediate community even as it developed solutions for global implementation. The transformation had not been easy. Despite Lucas's generous provision of the building, renovating the space and equipping it properly had required careful budgeting of the grant money. Marina had insisted on hiring local contractors and sourcing materials from community businesses whenever possible, decisions that sometimes complicated the process, but aligned with her vision of responsible development. A knock on the open lab door interrupted their discussion. Marina looked up to see Lucas standing in the entrance. Casual in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, so different from the corporate executive she had first confronted months ago. "Am I interrupting?" he asked, his gaze taking in the bustling workspace with evident appreciation. "Just some troubleshooting," Marina replied, setting down her tablet. "Come in. You haven't seen the place since we finished the renovations." As she gave Lucas a tour of the lab, introducing him to team members and explaining their current projects, Marina found herself reflecting on the careful reconstruction of their relationship over the past 2 months. True to his word, Lucas had reintroduced himself, not as a CEO or even as the founder of the Horizon Foundation, but as a person finding his way back to his original purpose. Their new beginning had started with coffee at the same diner where they'd first built their friendship, but with one crucial difference: total honesty. Lucas had shared the full story of his privileged upbringing, his early idealism that led to founding Horizon, and the gradual compromises that had distanced him from his initial vision. Marina, in turn, had been more open about her own struggles, not just financial hardships, but the weight of responsibility she felt carrying forward her mother's sacrifices and dreams. These conversations had evolved into a tentative collaboration when Marina proposed a partnership model between her lab and the Horizon Foundation, one that preserved her independence while leveraging Lucas's resources and connections. "This is incredible," Lucas said now, genuine admiration in his voice as they completed the tour in the small rooftop garden where the team was testing water-efficient growing methods. "You've accomplished so much in such a short time." "We've been motivated," Marina replied with a smile. "Having actual deployment dates on the calendar tends to focus the mind." Lucas nodded, leaning against the rooftop railing. "Speaking of which, that's partly why I'm here. The Ethiopia implementation team has some questions about modifying the system for their specific groundwater conditions. I told them you'd be the best person to consult." Marina's project in rural Ethiopia would be the first international deployment of her water purification system, a collaboration between her lab and the Horizon Foundation that had come together with surprising speed and harmony. "Of course, I can meet with them tomorrow," she replied, joining him at the railing. Below them, the neighborhood stretched out, still struggling in many ways but with small signs of renewal appearing. A new community garden, fresh paint on the elementary school, a small business incubator that had opened in a formerly abandoned building. "How's Jennifer settling in as interim CEO?" Marina asked, genuinely curious about Horizon's transition. "Better than anyone expected," Lucas replied. Turns out 5 years of cleaning up my messes prepared her perfectly for the job. The board still grumbles about our new direction, but the employee response has been overwhelmingly positive. People want to work for a company with purpose. And you? Marina asked more softly. No regrets about stepping down? Lucas considered the question seriously, as he did most things these days. Honestly, I've never been happier. The foundation work is challenging in all the right ways, and I'm sleeping better than I have in years. He smiled ruefully. Though my financial advisor still has a minor heart attack every time we talk. Marina laughed, then grew more serious. I've been meaning to ask you something. The anonymous grant that funded my prototype back at university, was that from you personally or from Horizon? Me personally, Lucas admitted. I didn't want any corporate strings attached. Why do you ask? Marina turned to face him fully. Because I'd like to create a scholarship program for engineering students from disadvantaged backgrounds, one that covers not just tuition but living expenses, so they don't have to work multiple jobs while studying. The passion in her voice was unmistakable. I'd like to use some of the foundation funding, with your blessing. Lucas's face lit up with immediate understanding. Marina, that's brilliant. It's exactly the kind of systemic approach we should be taking. He hesitated, then added more personally, your mother would be incredibly proud. The mention of her mother brought the expected pang of grief, but it was tempered now with pride and purpose. She always said education was how we changed our stars. They stood in companionable silence for a moment, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the rooftop garden. I should let you get back to work, Lucas said finally. Dinner tomorrow. After the Ethiopia team meeting, that new Ethiopian restaurant opened a few blocks from here. I'd like that, Marina replied, their dinner plans having evolved from strictly professional discussions to something more comfortable, though neither had rushed to define exactly what their relationship was becoming. As Lucas turned to leave, Marina added, Oh, and Lucas, bring your notebook. I have some ideas about incorporating renewable energy into the next generation system that I think you'll find interesting. He smiled, the genuine warmth reaching his eyes in a way that still caught her off. Guard sometimes. I always bring my notebook when I'm meeting with you. Some of my best ideas start as Marina Matthews' suggestions. After he left, Marina returned to the lab, where Raj was already implementing their new filtration sequence configuration. Was that the famous Lucas Bennett? He asked with a knowing smile. Just Lucas, Marina corrected automatically. He had some questions about the Ethiopia project. Uh-huh, Raj replied skeptically. That's why he was looking at you like you personally hang the moon and stars. Marina felt heat rise to her cheeks. We're colleagues. Partners in important work. If you say so, boss. Raj turned back to the prototype, but not before adding, for what it's worth, you look at him the same way when you think no one's watching. Later that evening, as Marina locked up the lab after everyone else had gone home, she allowed herself to acknowledge the truth in Raj's observation. Whatever was developing between her and Lucas transcended professional collaboration or even friendship. But unlike their first connection, built on Lucas's partial truths, this new relationship was founded on shared purpose, mutual respect, and complete honesty, a foundation strong enough to support whatever might grow from it. As she walked home through the cooling evening air, Marina reflected on how much had changed in less than a year. From a chance encounter at a subway station to a partnership that was already bringing clean water to communities in need, it was a journey neither of them could have anticipated. What Marina couldn't know was that their carefully reconstructed relationship was about to face its greatest test, one that would challenge not just their personal connection, but the very work to which they had both committed their lives. The following day brought an unexpected visitor to the lab. Marina was deep in conversation with the Ethiopia implementation team when Raj appeared at the conference room door, looking uncharacteristically concerned. Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone insisting on seeing you. Richard Maxwell? Says he's from Horizon Technologies. Marina frowned. She knew the name. Lucas had mentioned him as one of the board members most resistant to Horizon's new direction. "Tell him I'm in a meeting, but I can spare 15 minutes in about an hour," she replied professionally. "He says it's urgent. Something about the foundation funding being in jeopardy." That got Marina's attention. She excused herself from the meeting and found Richard Maxwell waiting in the lab's small reception area, a sharply dressed man in his 50s with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to getting his way. "Mr. Maxwell," Marina greeted him with professional courtesy. "This is unexpected." "Ms. Matthews," he replied, his assessing gaze taking in both her and the lab space behind her. "I apologize for the interruption, but I believe we have matters of mutual concern to discuss." She led him to a small conference room, closing the door to ensure privacy. "I understand you have concerns about the foundation funding?" Maxwell wasted no time on pleasantries. "I'll be direct, Ms. Matthews. The board is deeply troubled by the direction Lucas Bennett has taken with both Horizon Technologies and his personal fortune. The foundation's focus on humanitarian projects like yours, while admirable, is not maximizing shareholder value." Marina kept her expression neutral. "I don't see how this concerns my lab, Mr. Maxwell. Our funding agreement is with the Horizon Foundation, which is a separate entity from Horizon Technologies." "Technically correct," Maxwell acknowledged with a thin smile. "But practically speaking, the Foundation's existence depends on the continued financial health of Horizon Technologies, and that health is increasingly at risk under the current strategy." He placed a leather portfolio on the table between them, extracting a document which he slid toward Marina. "These are the latest financial projections. As you can see, Horizon's stock has dropped nearly 30% since Lucas's transformation. Major investors are threatening to pull out entirely." Marina glanced at the document but didn't pick it up. "Again, I'm not clear on why you're bringing this to me rather than to Lucas or the Foundation board." Maxwell leaned forward slightly. "Because you, Ms. Matthews, appear to be the catalyst for this entire situation. Lucas was a brilliant, pragmatic CEO before he met you. Now he waved a hand dismissively, giving away his fortune and tanking his company in some misguided attempt at social impact." Marina felt her temper rising but kept her voice steady. "If you're suggesting that I manipulated Lucas in some way—" "Not at all," Maxwell interrupted smoothly. "I believe your influence was entirely unintentional. But the fact remains that Lucas values your opinion above all others these days, which is why I'm here to propose a compromise that could save both Horizon Technologies and your water project." He produced another document, this one significantly thicker. "This is a proposal for restructuring the Foundation's relationship with Horizon, limiting Foundation funding to 10% of profits rather than the current fixed percentage of revenue, prioritizing projects with clearer market applications, and bringing Foundation activities more directly under board oversight." Marina skimmed the document with growing alarm. The proposed changes would effectively gut the Foundation's ability to support projects like hers that prioritized accessibility over profitability. "And if these changes aren't adopted?" she asked, already suspecting the answer. Maxwell's expression hardened slightly. "Then I'm afraid the board will be forced to take more drastic action. We have legal grounds to challenge Lucas's transfer of Horizon shares to the Foundation, which could freeze all Foundation activities indefinitely." "That sounds like a threat, Mr. Maxwell." "It's simply reality, Ms. Matthews. Business is business." He stood to leave. "I'm hoping you'll be the voice of reason here. Help Lucas understand that his idealism needs to be tempered with practicality if he wants to have any impact at all." After Maxwell left, Marina sat alone in the conference room, the unwelcome proposal still on the table before her. The implications were clear. Either compromise the very purpose of their work, or risk losing it altogether in a protracted legal battle. She should call Lucas immediately, warn him about Maxwell's visit and threats. And yet, a seed of doubt had been planted. Was she responsible for driving Lucas to decisions that were now threatening everything he had built? Had her influence pushed him too far, too fast? As Marina returned to the Ethiopia implementation meeting, she carried not just Maxwell's documents but a weight of responsibility she hadn't anticipated when she agreed to partner with the Horizon Foundation. What had seemed like a perfect alignment of values and resources now appeared fragile, vulnerable to forces she hadn't fully considered. Lucas arrived at the lab later that afternoon for the scheduled meeting, unaware of Maxwell's visit or Marina's growing concerns. As they dove into technical discussions with the implementation team, Marina pushed the morning's confrontation to the back of her mind. They had work to do, work that could change lives, and she wouldn't let corporate politics derail it. But even as they finalized plans for the Ethiopia deployment, Marina knew that difficult conversations lay ahead. Their carefully reconstructed partnership was about to face its first major test, and how they navigated it would determine not just their personal relationship, but the future of everything they were trying to build together. The dinner Marina and Lucas had planned following the Ethiopia project meeting never happened. Instead, they sat in Marina's small office at the lab, Maxwell's proposal spread between them on her desk, the untouched takeout containers from the Ethiopian restaurant forgotten in the corner. "I can't believe he came to you directly," Lucas said, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief as he finished reading through the documents. "Maxwell has been fighting the Foundation since day one, but this crosses a line." Marina studied Lucas carefully. He looked tired, the past few months of restructuring Horizon while building the Foundation clearly taking their toll, though he rarely complained. "He seems to think I have significant influence over you." "He's not wrong about that," Lucas admitted with a faint smile that quickly faded. "But using that to try to manipulate you to make you feel responsible for business decisions that are entirely mine, that's unacceptable." Marina leaned forward, her voice gentle but direct. "Lucas, we need to talk about the financial realities here. A 30% drop in stock value isn't just numbers on a page. That's people's jobs, investors' retirement, funds." She hesitated before adding, "Maxwell might be playing dirty, but what if he's right about the pace of change being too fast?" Lucas looked up sharply. "You can't seriously be considering his proposal." "I'm not," Marina assured him. "But I am questioning whether we've been too idealistic, too focused on what should be possible without fully accounting for what is possible right now." She stood and began pacing the small office, her engineering mind already framing the problem as one requiring logical analysis. "The Foundation isn't just funding my lab, Lucas. It's supporting dozens of projects worldwide. If Maxwell follows through on his threat to legally challenge your share transfer, all of that work gets frozen indefinitely." Lucas ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in the gesture. "So what are you suggesting? That we capitulate? Accept a 10% funding cap that would effectively gut most of our initiatives?" "No," Marina said firmly. "But maybe we need to think strategically rather than ideologically. Find a middle path that preserves the mission while addressing some of the board's concerns." She returned to her desk, pulling out a blank notepad. "Every engineering problem has constraints. Budget, materials, time, physics itself. The best solutions don't ignore those constraints. They work within them creatively." Lucas watched as she began sketching ideas, a reluctant admiration tempering his initial resistance. This was the Marina he had come to deeply respect. Practical, solution-oriented, unwilling to surrender to artificial limitations but also clear-eyed about genuine obstacles. "What are you thinking?" he asked finally. "A phased approach," Marina replied, turning the notepad so he could see her diagram. "Instead of an immediate 50% redirection of resources, we propose a graduated transition, 20% now, increasing by 10% annually as we demonstrate positive outcomes and financial sustainability." Lucas studied her sketch with growing interest. The board might accept that. They understand roadmaps and incremental changes. "And here," Marina continued, flipping to a new page, "we create a dual-track development model for technologies like mine. The core humanitarian versions remain accessibility-focused, but we simultaneously develop premium variations for commercial markets in developed countries. Cross-subsidization. Lucas nodded, catching on quickly. The commercial sales help fund the humanitarian deployments. Exactly. It's not compromising the mission. It's creating a sustainable model to support it. Marina's eyes were bright with problem-solving energy. And for the most promising technologies, we could create public-private partnerships with governments and NGOs, reducing the direct financial burden on Horizon while still scaling impact. For the next several hours, they worked side by side, crafting a counter-proposal that maintained the Foundation's core purpose while addressing the legitimate financial concerns of Horizon's board. As midnight approached, they had created a detailed plan that felt neither like surrender nor wishful thinking, but a pragmatic path forward. This could work, Lucas said, reviewing their final draft with growing confidence. Maxwell won't be thrilled, but the
more reasonable board members will recognize that this preserves shareholder value while still accomplishing what matters most. Marina smiled tiredly. It's not perfect, but perfect is the enemy of good. And this is definitely good. Lucas reached across the desk and took her hand, his expression
serious. Thank you for not just telling me what I wanted to hear, for challenging me to find a better way forward. That's what partners do. Marina replied simply, the word partners carrying layers of meaning neither was quite ready to fully articulate. What they couldn't have anticipated was that Maxwell had been laying groundwork far beyond his visit to Marina's lab. The following morning brought news that shook the foundation of their carefully constructed compromise. Lucas, have you seen this? Jennifer's voice was tight with concern as she called him just after 6 a.m. You need to turn on Channel 7 News right now. Lucas, who had been reviewing their counter-proposal one final time before his scheduled meeting with the board, switched on the television to find a breaking business news story. Ethical questions raised about Horizon Foundation grants. The report featured none other than Richard Maxwell, looking appropriately concerned as he explained to the reporter how certain foundation grants may have been influenced by personal relationships rather than merit. While he carefully avoided naming Marina or her lab specifically, the implication was clear enough. This is a coordinated attack, Jennifer confirmed grimly over the phone. The same story is running in the Wall Street Journal and 3 major tech blogs. Maxwell has been working on this for weeks, lining up quotes from anonymous insiders questioning the Foundation's grant selection process. Lucas felt cold fury building within him. He's trying to make it look like the Foundation is just my personal pet project, funding my... He struggled to find the appropriate word. Friend's lab because of our relationship rather than the merit of her work. It gets worse, Jennifer continued. He's filed a formal ethics complaint with the board, requesting an independent review of all Foundation grants and a freeze on new funding until the review is complete. By the time Lucas arrived at Marina's lab an hour later, the damage was spreading. Several university officials had left urgent messages, concerned about potential ethics violations related to her grant funding. 2 community partners had called to verify that the Ethiopia implementation was still proceeding as planned, and Marina's phone was ringing constantly with calls from journalists seeking comment on her special relationship with the Horizon Foundation's benefactor. Marina herself was remarkably composed when Lucas found her in her office, though the strain showed in the tightness around her eyes. This isn't just about the Foundation anymore, she said without preamble. He's attacking my professional reputation, the integrity of my work. Lucas's expression was grim. I know. I'm so sorry, Marina. This is my fault. Stop, she interrupted firmly. This is Maxwell's doing, not yours. Playing the blame game is exactly what he wants. She gestured to her computer screen where she had been drafting a statement. We need to respond strategically, not emotionally. Despite the crisis unfolding around them, Lucas felt a surge of admiration for Marina's clear-headed approach. What are you thinking? Transparency, she replied decisively. Complete, immediate, and overwhelming. Transparency. We release the full grant application process, the expert review panel's evaluations, the comparative scoring of all applicants. We document every step that led to my lab receiving funding. Lucas nodded slowly. That addresses the merit question, but Maxwell's also implying that our personal relationship influenced the decision. So we acknowledge that too, Marina said simply. Yes, we know each other. Yes, that's how I initially learned about the foundation, but then I went through exactly the same application and review process as every other grantee. Her expression was resolute. I won't apologize for knowing you, Lucas, but I also won't let anyone question whether my work stands on its own merits. They spent the morning crafting a comprehensive response strategy, with Jennifer coordinating between them and Horizon's communications team. By noon, they had released a detailed explanation of the Foundation's grant review process, complete with the anonymized scoring rubrics used to evaluate all applications. Marina's lab's exceptional scores were evident, as was the fact that she had received no special treatment in the evaluation process. But Maxwell had anticipated this move. As they were finalizing the last details of their transparency initiative, Raj burst into Marina's office, his expression unusually agitated. You need to see this, he said, handing Marina a printout of an email that had just been sent to the entire university engineering department. It was from a graduate student Marina barely knew, claiming that she had been pressured to falsify data on her water purification project to make the results look more impressive for grant applications. The call came at 3:17 a.m., jolting Marina from a deep sleep. She fumbled for her phone in the darkness, her mind still foggy with exhaustion after weeks of intense work following the shareholder victory. Hello, she managed, trying to focus on the international number flashing on her screen. Dr. Matthews? This is Daniel from the Ethiopia implementation team. The voice on the other end was strained, the connection spotty. We have a situation. The primary filtration system has failed, and we're seeing contamination levels rising rapidly in the village water supply. Marina was instantly alert, switching on her bedside lamp and reaching for the notepad she kept nearby. What exactly happened? Is anyone ill? Not yet, Daniel reported, relief evident even through the poor connection. We caught it during routine testing, but the system is offline and we can't identify the source of the failure. The local team is demanding answers, and the regional officials are threatening to shut down all our projects if we can't resolve this quickly. I'll be on the first available flight, Marina said without hesitation. Send me all the test data immediately and make sure no one uses the water until we identify the problem. After hanging up, Marina sat motionless for a moment, the magnitude of the situation sinking in. The Ethiopia project was the Horizon Foundation's flagship international implementation. Its success or failure would set the tone for all future deployments. More importantly, it served a community of nearly 3,000 people who had no alternative clean water source within walking distance. Despite the early hour, Marina called Lucas immediately. He answered on the second ring, sounding as alert as if it were midday. What's wrong? He asked without preamble, clearly sensing the urgency in her call. As Marina explained the situation, Lucas's response was immediate and decisive. I'll have the company jet ready in 3 hours. We can be in Addis Ababa by tomorrow night. We? Marina questioned, though she was already mentally packing her emergency field kit. Lucas, you don't need to come. This is a technical issue that requires engineering expertise. This is our most important project, Marina. The Foundation's commitment to these communities isn't just financial, it's personal. I'm coming. His tone left no room for argument. Besides, while you handle the technical aspects, I can deal with the officials and keep them from shutting down our other sites. By sunrise, they were airborne, the private jet allowing them to bypass the usual commercial flight delays. As they soared over the Atlantic, Marina spread diagrams and testing data across the cabin table, searching for potential failure points in the system design. The contamination pattern is strange, she murmured, more to herself than to Lucas. It's not consistent with a simple membrane failure or biological growth. Lucas watched her work with quiet, admiration. Despite the crisis, despite being awakened in the middle of the night and rushed onto an international flight, Marina was completely in her element, focused, analytical, determined to solve the problem. "What can I do to help?" he asked. Marina looked up, momentarily surprised, as if she'd forgotten he was there. "Actually, could you review these water quality reports? I'm looking for any unusual chemical signatures, anything that wasn't in our baseline testing from 3 months ago." They worked side by side for hours, Marina troubleshooting the technical aspects while Lucas organized the logistical and diplomatic response. By the time they landed in Ethiopia, they had developed preliminary theories and a structured action plan. The reality on the ground, however, proved more challenging than anticipated. The village was remote, accessible only by rough, unpaved roads that turned their final approach into a bone-jarring 2-hour drive. When they finally arrived, they found a community on edge, local officials demanding immediate answers, and an implementation team stretched to their limits trying to provide emergency water while diagnosing the system failure. "It's worse than we thought," Daniel explained as he led them to the filtration facility, a simple structure housing the technology Marina had designed. "The contamination levels are increasing, not stabilizing. And there's something else." He hesitated, looking uncomfortable. "What is it?" Lucas prompted. "There are rumors in the village that the system was deliberately compromised." Daniel lowered his voice. "Some are saying it's sabotage from a competing water company that lost the government contract to us." Marina and Lucas exchanged concerned glances. If true, this would complicate an already difficult situation immeasurably. "Let's not jump to conclusions," Marina said firmly. "First, we need to examine the system itself. Evidence, not speculation." For the next 24 hours, Marina barely left the filtration facility, meticulously testing every component of the system, collecting water samples at various stages of the process, and analyzing the results with the portable testing equipment they had brought from Boston. Lucas alternated between assisting her and meeting with local officials, using his considerable diplomatic skills to buy them the time needed to properly address the problem. The breakthrough came as dawn broke on their second day in the village. Marina, who had worked through the night, called Lucas to the facility with an urgency in her voice he hadn't heard before. "Look at this," she said without preamble, pointing to a section of piping she had disassembled. Inside, barely visible to the naked eye, was a hairline crack running the length of a crucial connector. "This is our failure point, but it's not normal wear and tear or manufacturing defect." Lucas leaned closer, frowning. "What am I looking at?" "Chemical erosion," Marina explained, her expression grim. "Someone introduced a corrosive agent into the system, something that would gradually weaken this connector until it failed. It was deliberate, Lucas. Carefully calculated to look like a design flaw rather than sabotage. The implications were sobering. Someone had intentionally endangered an entire community's water supply, potentially to discredit their project. The question was who and why. "We need to document everything meticulously," Lucas said, his mind already racing ahead to the potential ramifications. If this was intentionally compromised, we could be facing more than just a technical failure. This could be corporate espionage or worse. Marina nodded, already preparing samples for definitive testing. "I can repair the system quickly now that we've identified the problem, but proving sabotage will require specialized laboratory analysis." As Marina worked to restore the system, Lucas took the evidence they had gathered to the regional officials, explaining the situation with a careful balance of transparency and discretion. To his relief, they agreed to launch a formal investigation, particularly once he shared their preliminary findings, suggesting deliberate tampering. By nightfall, the filtration system was operational again, with additional safeguards and monitoring equipment installed. The community leaders gathered to witness the restoration of clean water, their initial suspicion gradually giving way to cautious gratitude as Marina explained the technical improvements she had made. "Your water is now safer than before," she assured them, her usual scientific precision tempered with genuine compassion. We've added additional filtration stages and continuous monitoring. If anything changes, even slightly, the system will alert us immediately. As the village celebrated the return of clean water, Marina and Lucas withdrew to the simple guest house where they were staying, both physically exhausted but mentally still processing the implications of what they had discovered. "I can't stop thinking about who would do this," Marina said, accepting the cup of tea Lucas handed her. "And why target this specific project?" Lucas sat across from her, his expression thoughtful. "I've been considering that all day. The timing seems too coincidental, coming right after our victory against Maxwell and the board. Challengers." Marina's eyes widened as she connected the dots. "You think Maxwell could be behind this? That would be criminal." "I'm not making accusations without evidence," Lucas clarified. "But someone went to extraordinary lengths to make your technology appear flawed. Someone with technical knowledge, resources, and a strong motivation to discredit both your work and the Foundation's. The possibility hung between them, disturbing but impossible to dismiss entirely." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the day's discoveries settling over them. "Whatever the truth," Marina finally said, "we overcame it. The system is working again, better than before. If someone was trying to derail our mission here, they failed." Lucas studied her face in the dim light of the guest house. Despite her exhaustion, there was a quiet strength there, an unwavering commitment to the work that transcended personal comfort or safety. In that moment, the feelings he had been carefully containing since their conversation after the shareholder vote threatened to overflow. "Marina," he began, his voice softer than intended. "Watching you these past 2 days, your brilliance, your dedication, the way you connected with the community despite language barriers and cultural differences, it's been extraordinary." She looked up, meeting his gaze with an intensity that made his heart race. "We make a good team, don't we? Despite everything, all the obstacles, the attacks, the challenges, we keep finding a way forward together." "Yes," Lucas agreed, gathering his courage. "But I need to be honest about something. When I think about why this work matters so much to me now, why I've fought so hard to protect it, it's not just about the mission anymore. It's about you, Marina. It's about us." Marina set down her tea, her expression unreadable. "Lucas, please let me finish," he said gently. "After the shareholder vote, when you suggested we should focus on building our professional success before complicating things, I respected that, I still do. But being here, facing this crisis together, it's clarified something for me. Life is unpredictable. There are no guarantees of right timing or perfect circumstances." He leaned forward, his gaze never leaving hers. "I'm not asking you to change anything about our working relationship. The Foundation, those remain exactly as they are. But I want you to know that my feelings for you go beyond professional admiration or even friendship. And if there's any chance you might feel the same way." Marina was silent for a long moment, and Lucas prepared himself for another gentle rejection, another suggestion that their timing was wrong or their priorities should remain elsewhere. Instead, she reached across the small table between them and took his hand in hers. "In engineering, we're taught to eliminate variables, to create controlled conditions before testing a hypothesis." A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. "But real life isn't a laboratory. There are always unpredictable factors, unexpected challenges." Her fingers tightened around his. "What I've learned from you, Lucas, is that sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, not blindly, but based on accumulated evidence and reasoned judgment." "And what does your evidence and judgment tell you now?" Lucas asked, hardly daring to breathe. "That life is too short and too precious to postpone joy when you find it," Marina replied, her voice steady despite the vulnerability in her eyes. "That what we've built, together, professionally and personally, is strong enough to withstand whatever complications might arise. That I care about you in ways that go far beyond our work together." The simple honesty of her words moved Lucas deeply. This was Marina. Direct, thoughtful, her emotions expressed with the same integrity she brought to everything else in her life. "So where does that leave us?" he asked softly. "Moving forward together," she replied, "in all aspects of our lives. Not because it's convenient or perfectly timed, but because it's right. Because we're stronger together than apart." In the quiet stillness of that moment, with the sounds of distant village celebration filtering through the open window, Lucas and Marina crossed the final boundary from partnership to something deeper, a connection forged through shared purpose, tested by adversity, and now embraced with clear-eyed awareness of both its challenges and its possibilities. 3 months later, the Marina Matthews Water Innovation Lab was bustling with activity as final preparations were made for the official opening ceremony. The converted warehouse had been transformed into a world-class research facility with state-of-the-art equipment and a diverse team of engineers, community advocates, and implementation specialists working side by side. Marina stood in her office, making final adjustments to her presentation while trying to ignore the butterflies in her stomach. Today wasn't just about celebrating the lab's official launch. It was about sharing the story of how it came to be, a story that had begun with a simple act of kindness at a subway station. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Lucas entered, his face breaking into a warm smile at the sight of her. "The auditorium is filling up. Your mother would be so proud of this day, Marina." Marina returned his smile, drawing strength from his presence as she had so many times over the past year. "I keep thinking about what she used to tell me. That education was how we changed our stars. I don't think even she could have imagined this." "Actually," Lucas said, a hint of nervousness in his voice, "there's something I wanted to show you before the ceremony." He handed her a small envelope. "It just came through this morning. I wanted it to be a surprise." Curious, Marina opened the envelope to find legal documents, the establishment of the Elena Matthews Scholarship Fund, named for her mother, dedicated to supporting engineering students from disadvantaged backgrounds with full tuition and living expenses. "Lucas," she breathed, emotion tightening her throat. How did you even know her name was Helena?" "You mentioned it once months ago when you showed me her picture," he replied softly. "I remembered because it mattered to you." Marina traced her fingers over her mother's name on the document, overwhelmed by the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "This is the most perfect gift anyone has ever given me." Lucas took her hand, his expression growing more serious. "There's more. The community center where we installed that first filtration system based on your design. The board voted unanimously to name it after your mother as well." He smiled at her astonishment. "Yes, even Maxwell supported it. Turns out nearly being indicted for corporate espionage and sabotage has made him remarkably cooperative. The investigation into the Ethiopia system tampering had indeed led back to connections with Maxwell's office, though the evidence suggested he had only authorized disruption of the project, not the potentially dangerous sabotage his overzealous operative had implemented. The legal consequences and public relations disaster had effectively ended his influence at Horizon, cementing the company's new direction under Jennifer's capable leadership as permanent CEO. "It's time," Lucas said gently, noting the hour. "Everyone's waiting." As they walked together toward the auditorium, Marina reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. From a chance encounter between strangers to partners in every sense, building something that was already changing lives around the world. The auditorium fell silent as Marina took the podium, facing a diverse audience that included community members, university colleagues, Horizon employees, and media representatives. Lucas sat in the front row, his quiet confidence a source of strength as she began to speak. 1 year ago, a simple act of kindness at a subway station set in motion events that none of us could have predicted, Marina began, her voice clear and strong. "Today, as we officially open the Marina Matthews Water Innovation Lab, I want to share that story with you, Not because it's about me or even about the remarkable technology we're developing here, but because it illustrates a fundamental truth we too often forget. That meaningful change often begins with small moments of human connection. As Marina recounted their journey, the subway fare, the friendship that developed, the revelations and conflicts, the ultimate triumph of purpose over profit. She saw heads nodding throughout the audience, people connecting with the universal elements of their story, even as they appreciated its unique details. The most valuable lesson I've learned through this journey, Marina continued, reaching the conclusion of her speech, is that true innovation isn't just about technology, it's about people, about seeing problems through the eyes of those experiencing them, about building solutions that honor human dignity and potential rather than creating new dependencies. She gestured to the lab around them. Everything we create here will be guided by that principle, and everything we've already accomplished proves that doing good and doing well are not opposing goals, but complementary ones. As applause filled the auditorium, Marina spotted a familiar face in the back. Crosu Sam, the night station attendant who had witnessed their first encounter. Lucas had tracked him down and invited him specially for the occasion, a detail that still amazed Marina with its thoughtfulness. Later, as they cut the ribbon to officially open the lab's doors, Marina and Lucas stood side by side, their journey from strangers to partners, both professional and personal, now an integral part of the foundation they had built together. "You know," Lucas said quietly, for her ears only, "when you paid my subway fare that night, you said you knew what it was like to miss the last train." Marina smiled at the memory. "I did. I think about that often," Lucas continued, watching as visitors began streaming into the lab for tours. "About how easy it would have been for us to miss each other entirely, for me to have found my wallet, or for you to have left earlier, or for any number of small circumstances to be different. The engineer in me wants to point out that's just probability and chance," Marina replied with a teasing smile. "But the person I've become through knowing you prefers to see it as something more meaningful, the right people finding each other at exactly the right moment." As they walked together into the lab, ready to demonstrate the next generation of water purification technology to their guests, Marina reflected on how profoundly that moment at a subway station had transformed both their lives. A simple act of kindness had catalyzed not just personal change, but a ripple effect of transformation that would touch countless lives around the world. In the end, their journey had revealed a powerful truth, that when purpose and compassion align, when barriers between people dissolve in service of something greater than themselves, remarkable things become possible, not just in technology or business, but in the human heart itself. The subway fare that Marina Matthews had once given to a stranger had been repaid 1,000-fold, not in money, but in meaning, in lives improved, in communities empowered, and in a partnership that continued to prove that the most valuable currency in life is not what we possess, but what we are willing to give away.